Imagine being at the center of a community with friends, family, and a clearly defined life purpose. Suddenly you are thrown out, without warning, without clear explanations. Disassociation is a silent but devastating process. When someone decides to leave Jehovah's Witnesses or is disassociated for doctrinal reasons, the impact is not only in faith, but in all their social existence. It is as if the floor opened under his feet. Friends who once shared every moment now become strange. The family, which you loved and respected, often follows a tacit order: do not talk to the disassociates. The process of disassociation is almost a sentence of social exile. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that if someone leaves faith, one must cut any kind of bond with that person, even if he is his own daughter or brother. But what does this really mean for those who are at the center of this hurricane? What is it like to look at the eyes of a loved one and realize that, according to the doctrine, you no longer exist for that person? This moment of rupture and loneliness is the beginning of a painful journey where the old world collapses and a new reality needs to be rebuilt. But how? You grew up believing that the family was everything. In Jehovah's Witnesses, the family unit was the foundation of his life, his safe haven. But everything changes the moment the decision is made, or if it is made by you. Leaving religion is not just a personal choice, it is a bomb of moral and emotional effect that reverberates throughout the family nucleus. Imagine having to look at your parents who have dedicated your whole life to that faith and see in their eyes a mixture of disappointment and sadness. They are forced to follow the doctrine, which says they should no longer interact with you, not even with a simple hug. What is more painful? Does the rejection of your own faith or the distance from who has always been your greatest emotional base? This is the paradox of the exit. The more you move away from a doctrine you feel that you don't represent you more, the more you are away from those you love. The pain of losing connection with family members is not something anyone can fully understand. It is not just about disagreeing with beliefs. It is losing part of who you are, and in a way, to be thrown on the fringes of everything that was your own. You still remember how easy it was to be part of that world, but now everything is hazy. Now imagine a world where you see yourself on the sidelines, where the people you knew for years, with whom you shared laughs, tears, and significant moments, just can no longer be part of your life. Jehovah's Witnesses teach that by leaving the congregation, you are moving away from a corrupted world, and therefore it is necessary to isolate yourself from these influences. But what happens when isolation is not just doctrinal, but real? When do you feel that you are out of the circle, without friends, without support? The social is one of the most powerful things a community offers, and upon leaving, you lose the structure that made sense to your days. Friends can no longer be friends. Family events saw a mark of pain because the invitations disappear. The feeling of being a shadow, wandering around the world without a place to which it belongs, is overwhelming. Silence weighs even more when you try to look for refuge in other groups, but the feeling of being estranged is uncontrollable. Everything seems distant, and the struggle for identity becomes a daily battle. How can anyone feel connected to a world that offers neither the least welcome? This is the distressing dilemma of those who decide or are forced to leave Jehovah's Witnesses. Is loneliness too high to pay for freedom? When you decide to leave, freedom looks like a gift. But soon the question arises, what now? You are facing a void, a blank page. After spending a lifetime with beliefs shaped by a religion, how to fill this space that was suddenly vacated? Many former members of Jehovah's Witnesses find themselves on an intense journey of searching for new meanings, a journey that is often full of attempts and errors. The process of exploring other beliefs can be fascinating, but also scary. Over the years, you have been taught to believe that the only truth was there, within those rigid teachings. Now, the idea of finding something new, something that makes sense to you, is like trying to see in the dark. You no longer believe in the certainties that were once unquestionable. But what comes after that? There is a constant search for something greater, a new purpose or an explanation that fills the void left by religion. But how to find something that makes sense when you still feel the weight of doubt and the pressure of trying not to repeat the same mistakes? The search for answers becomes a shadow game where with each step the future gets more hazy. You may find a new way, but will you be able to get rid of the invisible currents that still hold it to the past? When you leave the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses, it is not just a matter of changing beliefs, it is an identity crisis. For years, you have lived absolute certainty about the world, the purpose of life and fate after death. The Bible was the only truth, and all that happened was a reflection of the divine plan. But when you leave, you lose the safe foundation in which you sustained your existence. Now everything is open. You start to question everything. What is true? Who am I without this religious identity? Where do I fit the world? It is as if the world of certainties were destroyed, leaving an empty space full of endless questions. The fear of being wrong, of getting lost in the way, becomes constant. And the most disturbing is the fact that over the years, Jehovah's doctrine has taught him to be afraid of the world. And now, what remains is this vast and unexplored world. How to trust your own conclusions? Are you going on the right track? Doubts persist, but now you have to face them alone, without the safety of a ready and easy answer. The feeling of being drifting is distressing. The question that remains is, how to find peace without absolute certainties? By leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, you are not just distancing yourself from a religion, but in an entire way of living. Waking up, living, and even thinking in a way that was once unthinkable. Remember how, for years, your life has been governed by strict rules, strict meetings, prohibition of certain friendships, aspects of life that were absolutely prohibited or questionable. But when you leave, you realize that now the world is at your disposal, and the choices are yours. And with this freedom come the first steps of a new lifestyle. Now you can go to the movies, listen to any kind of music, or even celebrate holidays that were previously forbidden. But at the same time, there is a sense of discomfort, a kind of residual guilt. Freedom, which should be something liberating, sometimes seems a weight. What can you do now without the guidance of religion? How to find a balance between the joy of freedom and the echoes of past behavior, which still resonate within you. These changes even affect relationships. People who were previously strange become new friendships. You begin to find that there is much more in the world beyond the borders that religion has imposed. But adaptation takes time. The freedom to act and think as you want is liberating but also scary. The biggest challenge is to realize that now you are responsible for your choices and that there is no one else to dictate the rules. Imagine yourself coming out of a room full of people who for years were like a family for you. Now you are someone completely new to them. By leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, you are not just breaking ties with a religious community, you also find yourself in a strange field of social judgment. What happens when the world outside doesn't accept you the way you imagined? The stigma of being a former member of Jehovah's Witnesses is real. Many become targets of criticism and suspicious looks. You realize that society outside has no idea how to deal with someone who comes from such a particular religious experience. Your friends, now former companions of faith, can look at you with pity, with suspicion, or even as someone lost. And Even harder, it is dealing with the reaction of your family that is still within faith. You are often treated like a threat to their truth. Sometimes you feel you are stuck between two worlds, the religion you left behind and the society that still judges you for it. How can it be so difficult to understand? You wonder if you will ever find a place where you will finally be accepted by who you really are. The social consequences of leaving such a closed religion can be devastating and make the feeling of being even more painful. The departure of Jehovah's Witnesses is not just a religious change, it is an internal battle. Many former members carry invisible wounds, marks that remain long after they leave the faith. The emotional trauma of being part of such a controlling community, where doubt is seen as a sin, can have deep consequences in mental health. For years, you have lived with the constant pressure to follow inflexible rules. Any questioning was punished, and it was a constant burden. And the fear of being disassociated, of being abandoned, is a shadow that hangs over each action. The psychological impact is devastating, but it is not visible to others. How do you explain this? Pain to someone who never lived the same experience. After leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, many meet in a spiral of self-criticism, depression, and anxiety. There is the constant struggle with the idea of being different, and with the existential emptiness that is after breaking with such a rigid, religious structure. In addition, memories of a controlling environment make marks difficult to erase. The question is it possible to find a cure and rebuild a healthy identity after all this? The family has always been the pillar of your life, but when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses, this pillar begins to collapse. The doctrine you followed for so long teaches that true loyalty has faith, not with the family. When you decide to leave, disconnecting with your loved ones is not just emotional but spiritual. The rules are clear. Members of religion should not maintain relations with those who have moved away from faith. Now you are alone, away from everything you knew and loved. The calls decrease. Family meetings become rare and often even do not. How can it be so difficult to connect with the people you always loved? The answer seems simple. You need to change your identity, your beliefs, but others cannot. They are attached to what religion has determined. What you did then was seen as a betrayal. Is there any chance to resume these relationships? The desire to reconcile with the family is real and painful, but the ties seem irreparably broken, and the search for true reconciliation is full of obstacles. The most distressing, you feel that the only way to recover these bonds is to accept back the religion you have abandoned. Can there be genuine reconciliation without the need to go back? You look in the mirror and feel that you are no longer the same person. For years, his identity has been defined by faith, rules, the standards established by religion. Now, with this crumbly structure, who you really are. The reconstruction process is painful and often confusing. You feel lost, as if trying to find a piece of yourself that has always been hidden. Leaving a world where each decision was dictated, you are now facing a blank screen with the challenge of painting your new life. But what to do with all the emotional garbage accumulated during years of indoctrination? Invisible wounds still hurt, and you wonder if when reinventing yourself, you will be able to forget the years of suffering and repress the guilt that still pursues you. Society, with your own expectations and standards, also expects you to fit. But how to fit into a place where the rules have never been yours? Who am I without religion? If you ask this, it may be liberating, but it is also a journey of constant uncertainties. Each step towards this new identity is a risk, a walk through unknown territory. And if, when trying to reinvent yourself, you don't find anything good at the end, the fear of failing, of not being able to rebuild itself, is constant. After leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, you see yourself in a new world. But at the same time, He realizes that this world sees you differently. For many, being a former Jehovah's Testament is not just a religious change, it is a brand, as if you had been marked with a label, someone who left and doesn't come back anymore. This label creates a barrier between you and others, as few really understand what it means to leave something so deeply rooted. It is common for former member to face judgment looks. Society has its own expectations about who should follow certain beliefs. And when you leave the cycle, many wonder, is he lost? There are also those who, out of pure curiosity or stigma, make assumptions about what you have gone through and question their intentions. Even though you are free from religion, you still feel trapped in stereotypes and trials. But there is something even more difficult. The feeling of not belonging anywhere. You've been part of a community, but now you don't fit any other group. You begin to realize that as much as outward society is full of opportunities, it is also full of false perceptions, quick trials, and exclusions that make the pain of isolation perpetuate. How is it possible to be accepted by people who do not understand the complexity of their journey? The journey of leaving Jehovah's Witnesses does not end at the time of the decision. It is just the beginning of a long and challenging healing and self-discovery process. As much as you have physically freed yourself from a rigid religious structure, your mind still needs to detach from concepts, beliefs, and trauma that have been shaped by years of indoctrination. The path of healing is winding. Many times you feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster. There is days of progress where you feel stronger and more free, and others where the shadows of the past reach you, making you ask if you made the right decision. But deep down, you know the answer lies in the reconstruction of your identity. To heal is not to forget the past, but to find strength in the lessons he brought. The real question is there hope for someone who feels lost? The answer is yes. The cure, though slow and full of challenges, is possible. You begin to realize that by breaking with religion, you are also breaking with a part of yourself that you no longer served you. Gradually, you will find new meanings for life, new ways of loving, new friendships, and perhaps most importantly, self-knowledge. The future is in your hands, and now, more than ever, you are the author of your own story. What you saw here is not just the history of a religion, it is the story of a struggle for freedom, identity, and self-discovery. By leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, every step taken towards freedom is marked by challenges, pain, and, of course, a constant process of reconstruction. But as difficult as it may be, there is always the possibility of starting over, finding your own truth, and one day look back and see that you have won. Now the question is, how would you deal with all this? If you have an experience to share, if you have gone through something similar or have doubts about what happens after leaving a religion, share in the comments. Let's create a space to exchange experiences and support, because after all, each story matters. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give that like and subscribe to the channel to keep following stories like this. Activate the bell to be the first to know when new videos air. And don't forget to share with your friends. You may need to hear this message today. What do you think? Will you risk starting your reinvention journey? Comment below your experience. I really want to know how you dealt or are dealing with changes in your life. We are together in this.